The Trop has dropped, and there are new details about funding for the baseball stadium set to replace it. Plus,
those young people want to know about this world in which they live, its beauty, but also its tragedy. They have to know that there were others that were here first when their ancestors came to our shores.
a pioneer in Native American studies, we sit down with National Humanities Medal winner Henrietta Mann ahead of Indigenous Peoples Day.
Support for Nevada Week is provided by Senator William H. Hernstedt.
Welcome to Nevada Week. I'm Amber Renee Dixon. Look at the Las Vegas skyline and you will no longer see the iconic Tropicana Hotel and Casino. Nevada Week was there early Wednesday morning when demolition crews imploded the Rat Pack era property to make way for a Major League Baseball stadium.
Just call me the implosion guy. I was on the air for so many years in Las Vegas as a local reporter covering the implosions during the 90s, the 2000s. People would see me around town. They wouldn't necessarily point at me and say, hey, that's Steve Krupe, the reporter. They'd go, aren't you the implosion guy? And so it kind of stuck.
Steve Krupe has high standards for implosions, but the Tropicanas met them.
This was definitely in the top 10. The fireworks, the drone show was pretty cool. And then out here in person, you could really feel those charges go off. I mean, right in the center of your body. It was pretty good.
When it opened in 1957, the Tropicana's opulence earned it the nickname the Tiffany of the Strip. With two 23-story towers, demolition crews reported using more than 2,000 pounds of explosives to bring them down around 2 a.m. Wednesday. Late Tuesday night is when the media and VIP guests began to arrive and speculate about the likelihood of this location becoming the Athletics' future home.
I've seen properties imploded, such as the New Frontier Hotel, where the big plans that were announced never happened. And if you go to the site of the New Frontier Hotel today, what is there? A dirt lot. And so there's no guarantee here.
And that same skepticism surrounds this site, where the Athletics plan to use public funding in order to build a Major League Baseball stadium scheduled to open in time for the 2028 season. The A's estimate the 33,000-seat stadium will cost $1.5 billion.
There is just so much skepticism, and I think it focuses on the public divulging of financing by the owner. And I put this into context of the Raiders stadium process, where the Raiders had a pie chart, and that pie chart showed the funding sources of how you're going to build the stadium. And we just haven't had that pie chart yet. I think people are very interested about the breakdown of the owner, how much equity is John Fisher pouring into it. A's owner, John Fisher, did speak at a ceremony ahead of the implosion, thanking the Nevada legislature for approving up to $380 million in public funding for the venue.
That starts with Governor Joe Lombardo, whose vision from the beginning that bringing baseball to the Strip would be an incredible thing in a city that is constantly reinventing itself.
But Fisher did not make himself available to the media for interviews like other project leaders did. Sue Kim is chairman of Bally's Corporation, which will construct a resort next to the stadium, and Steve Hill is the CEO and president of the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. And there is skepticism, in particular about whether the A's can fund this stadium. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I don't see any doubt on that, actually. So obviously before we went about the process, we felt, like we wanted to get to know John Fisher, the owner, and we have no doubt. Forget about the resources. What matters is the will, and he absolutely is committed to bringing the A's here.
What insight do you have into the A's ability to fund this?
Well, I said earlier today at our board meeting, we've had the opportunity to review the balance sheet, and the backup to that balance sheet for the Fisher family, they clearly have, I mean, multiples of what it takes in order to make this stadium happen. They're committing to do it. It's going to happen.
But expecting Fisher to change,
You have an owner who just, does not talk publicly much.
may be like asking Las Vegas to stay the same.
The city's about reinvention, and so while it's sad to see it go, it's exciting to talk about the next steps.
The A's anticipate breaking ground on their new stadium in April of 2025. We move now to Indigenous Peoples Day, typically observed on the second Monday of October. In 2021, President Joe Biden issued the first ever presidential proclamation of Indigenous Peoples Day, and it was that same year he awarded Henrietta Mann the National Humanities Medal. A full-blood Cheyenne, she began teaching Native American studies at UC Berkeley in 1970. Her work, which I was fortunate to discuss with her, led to the creation of programs and institutions across the United States dedicated to Native American history and culture.
Education is the lifeblood of my culture. We believe as Indigenous peoples upon whose land Nevada now sits, Las Vegas sits. I want to pay tribute to the original peoples of this homeland and thank them for letting me come into their territories and to visit you in their PBS station. Berkeley, the heyday of activism. My goodness, it was a time of the Black Power movement at the University of California, Berkeley, and we then created our own Red Power movement. And heretofore, we had not been as active as other of our brothers and sisters from the white direction, from the black direction, from the yellow direction. But education is so important to us that we were so pleased to become one of the programs in the Ethnic Studies Department at, as we like to say, Cal Berkeley. Native American Studies as a curricular unit really grew out of the activism of the California at that time. In fact, California was the first to create and establish ethnic studies programs, paying tribute to the cultures of our Black brothers and sisters, our Asian brothers and sisters at that time, Chicano brothers and sisters, Hispanics, and of course, us. And I was ecstatic, as were many of my brothers and sisters and my relatives, to finally have the higher education systems of this land honor us as a people, honor our grandparents, honor our ancestors by including our histories, our contemporary issues, our ways of living, our beautiful and wonderful stories that are rooted in this land. And it was a new day in education for us.
What were your expectations for that class? Did you think you would be teaching fellow Native Americans?
You thought Native American studies, my classrooms are going to be filled with the children of this land, and I went to my first class and there were the children of my Anglo brothers and sisters, and there was not one Native American face there except mine. The first time that many mainstream children had ever seen a person of color standing in their classroom teaching them. And the Indian students, being the activists that they became, were out on Alcatraz. They wanted to claim that island and wanted to establish an all-Indian university where we would learn about the multiplicity of cultures that make us as Native Americans, about 573 nations recognized by the United States federal government, many more that are not recognized, some recognized by their respective states. I really think that that is so far removed from reality that we have been nothing but a lost, invisible page in the history books of this country, in the history of this nation, to be forgotten because we remind those that came to live with us that the land upon which they live and walk sometimes was stolen, taken, sold for pennies for those that came to live with us, who came here seeking many of them religious freedom, only to arrive on our shores and to become intense about converting the first peoples of this land to Christianity.
How well understood do you think that is now compared to when you began teaching Native American studies in the 70s?
I hope that Native American Studies programs have made some inroads into how we look at the reality of this world in which we live, on this beautiful land that we all share. But regrettably, it's still misunderstood. There are those that fail to see our kinship and relationship to the land. There are those that see this place only to be exploited for the natural resources that are a part of this earth that we call mother or grandmother, and to begin to extract oil, gas, silver, and now lithium at Red Mountain, that the indigenous peoples of this land are fighting to keep from exploitation and desecration of this land, all because there is this need in a world characterized by climate change that must look to the discontinuation of fossil fuels and look to, let's say, General Motors electric vehicles. And this lithium at Red Mountain is a vast resource that can power those vehicles so that it becomes a balancing act of further erosion of this country's land base. And on the other hand, what do we do about global warming and climate change into which our children and grandchildren are walking? And we really need the assistance of this country's educational systems to begin to integrate our histories, our views of the world into what makes up this beautiful place called America, that honors all of the peoples who have come to live here with us as the First Nations of this land.
At what age would you propose that public school students begin learning about Native American history?
In kindergarten.
And then what about at what point do you introduce the dark side of that history, the horrific mistreatment of the indigenous people here by the government?
I think in junior high.
Junior high.
Their minds are still fresh. Those young people want to know about this world in which they live, its beauty, but also its tragedy. They have to know that there were others that were here first. When their ancestors came to our shores, they need to know that the first peoples on this land are an old, old people who have a vast knowledge of environmental principles, of ways of living together that honors and respects the other person, strong value systems that have helped us maintain our ways of life for all time. Respect for the other person, love for that person, to walk in humility as but one other person, and to cooperate with one another.
To the parents who would say, I don't think my student should be learning about the injustices that the federal government, state governments were responsible for against the indigenous people here. It makes them feel guilty and less than. What would you say?
I'm sorry, but that was their history that they committed. We have to own our views of the world. They have to own theirs. Although it might not be them specifically. It's their grandparents, it's their great-grandparents, it's those that so-called discovered this land. How can you discover a land that has been peopled for all time? It is a history of their making. They need to know the role that they have played in terms of our continuing evolution and love of life as this land's first peoples.
And how do you go about explaining to a non-Native American person that connection to the land?
Let me just simplify that very quickly and say that the land is us. We are the land. If you stop and look at the fact that we as human beings are made up of earth, a loving, kind earth mother, grandmother, who continues to support our feet and give us as First Nations, as we see it, spiritual rootedness in this land that gives us life. And we need to know who we are, who I am. I am very proud of being American Indian, and so are all of my brothers and sisters and grandchildren. But we also know that we live in a world that is now peopled by many other nationalities and cultures. We need to recognize our commonality and respect those differences. That differences are strengths rather than weaknesses. That we each have something to offer one another. And that in this time in which our grandchildren and children are walking, they need to have every bit of knowledge that they can possibly acquire from each of the people in the four directions, from the white direction, from the red direction, from the yellow direction, and from the black direction. We have to respect and love each other because of our great and profound love for our children and grandchildren. We have to climate-proof them.
Do you mind sharing what you experienced as a child going to a public school?
I wanted to go to school so badly because my older brothers and sisters, and I do not have a biological brother or sister, but my cousins. There is no relationship for a cousin. We are all brothers and sisters. And so my older sister, she would come home from school and she said, today I'm going to teach you what I learned. We learned something called the vowels, so you will learn them too. Repeat after me. She was my teacher, A-E-I-O-U. I fell in love with that kind of learning because I knew that we were walking into a different time, that we were no longer isolated as the Cheyenne people, Tzitzis, the like-hearted people, and that we had to learn to navigate and live in this world that was dominated by those that came to live with us from the east direction, from the white direction. And unfortunately, in the early education of our young people by the federal government, they were subjected to an assimilationist type of education, comprised of a rudimentary education, a trade, and Christianity. Times have changed a little for us now that we know that there are programs like Native American Studies. But this world was so phenomenal and big out there, and I was expected to go out there and learn it and come back and share what I learned. I did go out, and I got a good education, the best that this country can offer anybody. It took me a long time to get my doctorate degree. I got it at about mid-40s or so. But our young people need to not just know how to navigate in this world and become the best scientists, the best educators, the best medical doctors, the best administrators, the best people that can work in public television. They need to know who they are as this land's first children, the values they carry, their history, with all its beauty and its tragedy. And so that was the world I went out to be educated in. But I never, ever forgot who I was as a Cheyenne Indian person. I'll never forget that. That's been my legacy.
And what was the experience that prompted you to say, I want to become a teacher?
An unfortunate experience of discrimination of Cheyenne children attending our public school. Unfortunately, they were singled out as children to be taken out in the hall. So was I. And our heads searched for head lice. The non-Indian children were not taken out. And so it was a very difficult lesson for me to learn at about age 8 or 9, that some individuals can be singled out and made to feel less than, with complete disregard for the places they lived, for their poverty, for not being able to have the kind of running water in their homes. They had to get their water from a little spring, and so that we had an Indian camp when I was growing up. So my little classmates, and I included, were singled out for this humiliating experience. I got on the bus home that evening and rode the 3 miles to Tots Up. Lousy Indian, dirty Indian, dumb Indian, lazy Indian. I never responded, I didn't react, except in my own mind, but particularly in my heart. I got off the bus, in that big yellow bus that I had longed to ride, drove away. Only then did I give in to tears, because I could see my grandfather coming down to meet me. I cried and ran to his arms, and he just held me. And he said, let's go home. And we sat on the porch. And that is the day that I made my commitment to become a teacher, an educator, so that teaching has been the fulfillment of a promise I made to my beloved grandfather long ago.
Thank you so much for joining Nevada Week.
Thank you for having me.
And And speaking of ways to honor one's ancestors, that's the purpose of a community ofrenda inside UNLV's Performing Arts Center. The Aztec dance circle, Calpuli Tlatelolco, held a ceremony at the ofrenda's unveiling. Las Vegas artist Elsa Cantu created the ofrenda, which includes the UNLV staff who lost their lives at a shooting on campus last year. She says an ofrenda serves to remember and welcome deceased loved ones.
I think our loved ones that they already passed away, like they're always with us somehow. But these days it's like 2 or 3 days that they're like come and enjoy with us, like this feast, the food, the music, and I think you feel them with you very, very close. And it's like a lot of, I don't know, details to put, the food, the desserts, the drinks they love, the candies, the sugar skulls. But nobody can touch the food but them, because it's for them.
All of us, you know, we set up an altar in our homes, and we've been doing this since time immemorial, since the time of the Olmecs. You know, we're not afraid of death. Death is part of life, you know, and that's what we need to remember, that death is just part of life, and we all gonna get there someday.
If you'd like to add to the community ofrenda, drop off a framed 4x6 photo at UNLV's administrative offices any weekday now until October 18th. You can see the finished ofrenda on October 25th. That's when the Performing Arts Center will be screening Disney Pixar's Coco, the music to which will be performed live by the National Folkloric Orchestra of Mexico. You can find more information on our website, vegaspbs.org/Nevada Week, and I'll see you next week on Nevada Week.